Cillian, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, Barrett,
Sure,
Hearth Design.
sure. So this is, it's now Killian,
Oh, apologies, Killian.
owner of Hearth Build Designs, exploring ecological, social, and economically responsible, creative living solutions. His project with Habitat Homes were mentioned last meeting and headed into our building code.
Welcome.
Hello.
Killian, can you hear us?
I can, yes. Yes, Killian, thank you.
Hi, Killian.
And I'm sure you're already aware of this, but yeah, it's a little patchy connection tonight. But thank you for having me. Appreciate the introduction. Silverton's actually kind of close to my heart. I was born and raised in Ireland, but my mother was originally from the States, and she actually lived in Silverton as the last place before she left in the 70s. So just a quick background on myself. Like I said, I was born and raised in Ireland as an architectural technician, which is not really a profession in the US, but in Europe, technicians can sign off on drawings like engineers and architects. I lived all over the States, mostly in cold climates, Arctic climates. I have my own company, like she said, and we focus on ecological, high performance, and affordable housing. So just to kind of give a background on how myself and my colleagues approach building projects in general, or our work in general, use a framework called resource conscious construction, which is a more inclusive framework to, rather than green building or natural building or eco construction, anything like that. Resource conscious construction recognizes that all builders, whether they're green builders or not, deal with basically the same resources, whether it's time or money or labor or available resources in terms of skills, literally materials, and whether those resources are being used responsibly. And so like I said, it's a more inclusive framework. And I try to avoid terms like green or natural building in our work, because I find they don't necessarily have any kind of like they're not in terms.
Killian, I think we just lost the town of Silverton on this presentation. Yeah, and as well as the community. But I think the town itself is gone because all of a sudden the video feed is clean.
Well, that makes you the king.
Not really. Let's just hold up a second, see if the town can bump back in.
Are you a town member, Shane?
I'm mayor. Just
you're mayor.
Participating in this meeting remotely. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Very nice to meet you.
You too. Yeah, I didn't expect the public comment at the beginning.
All right, looks like we're back on. Town, can you hear us? All right, Killian, have at it.
Oh, and you can see my slides, correct?
No, not yet. Would you like to share your screen?
Yes, I would. I didn't think
Excellent.
that makes more sense.
There you go.
Better.
That's a lot better.
Why isn't that working? Pardon me. Tell me, can you see?
Yes,
So you can see the slides and not me, is that correct?
that's correct.
All right.
Well, we can see you.
Okay, yeah, but you can see the town of Silverton slide.
We do.
Okay, great. Like I said, I ran through all that. So yeah, like I said, resource conscious construction is just a framework through which, a lens through which we do our work. And I am a certified passive house builder, and I'm BPI certified, but I tend to focus more on how we can really understand our impact without relying upon other formal building codes or building metrics. But having said that, Living Building Challenge is very inspirational, as is the Passive House Standard. I'm less inclined to use LEED. It tends to be more effective in the commercial sector. But in general, like I said, I have it in there. I use triple bottom lines as sort of another guideline for how my work is impacting socially, environmentally, and financially. And when I think about the projects that we're building, I think about, number one, my obligation is to the health of the occupants, the people who are going to live in it. Number two is to myself and to the workers. So when I'm specifying materials and processes for construction, I'm cognizant of like how that's going to affect those people. And then the third kind of level is about general environmental concern for the systems that provide us with the materials that we build with and the planet that we live on. I focus more on regeneration and resiliency rather than, sustainability or environmental kind of focuses, just looking at like, if we want to, as we make our actions, how can they have the most impact and how can they actually start to solve the problems that we're facing that are fairly obviously human caused, and not just do less bad. And so for every construction project, there's a huge spending of money and resources, and that project could be an opportunity for instance, for carbon sequestration. So we can actually start drawing down carbon rather than releasing less, because we're already kind of at the tipping point where we need to be looking at large scale solutions, but also in work as a home builder, I'm just seeing how each build can make that impact. So I was hired by Habitat for Humanity in Gunnison, Colorado in 2019 to build a straw bale home for their homeowners. The homeowners, the executive director, Julie Robinson, and the staff were all very supportive to really make a big impact, like I said, in terms of performance and resiliency, and with an environmental healthy home in mind. So we got, in 2019, we broke ground on a 900 square foot home. This was a process that Habitat for Humanity had been trying to get to for a while, and the stars could have kind of aligned with the right homeowners and the right staff / board members, and just it just kind of all worked out. Like I said, the bedroom is a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and it's all electric, combustion free. So we save money by not putting in any gas. For everything's electric, and focused very much on efficient appliances as well. We're able to build a house for $230,000, which our model at Habitat is a little different, that we include construction cost in our loan to or in the purchase price to our homeowners. So this actually works at about $130 a square foot in terms of construction cost. And it was fairly labor intensive, partly because of our focus on using raw materials. So we milled a lot of our own lumber. We made our own plasters from local sand and clay and straw. But we did it, none of the processes that we used were particularly novel, and the combination somewhat is, but very much building on the shoulders of giants in terms of ecological high performance homes and that have gone before, and solid building science. So part of our hypothesis was that we could build a very efficient home that had a low embodied energy or even sequestered carbon, and we could do it for the same cost as conventional construction if we just approached it differently. And so has proven out to be true. And we also managed to keep about $30,000 in our local economy by doing that. So 90% of the lumber in our home is either from the Grand Mesa or from Saguache lumber in the San Luis Valley. We use straw, cellulose in our envelopes, some wool insulation too, some cork, but almost predominant weight of the building was either grown produced or manufactured within 50 to 100 miles, definitely within state. And by doing that, like I said, we're able to keep a large portion of our money in our local economy, and actually roughly about the cost of what the amount of money that we saved was pretty similar to the annual income of our homeowners that qualify. So for an organization whose central mission, Habitat, is to address poverty by providing affordable housing, I think that's a really important metric. Without getting into all the technical stuff, we have a very efficient home that essentially at 20 below, if you had 20 people doing yoga, you'd be able to heat the home to 70 degrees. Our annual energy usage in 2002 was 4,500 kilowatt hours. Like I said, we focused on very efficient appliances. Our heating load was incredibly low. The home is actually frost proof, meaning that when you turn off all the heating systems in the middle of the wintertime, it'll not drop below 50 degrees. So we're not looking at an efficient home, we're also looking at one that's quite resilient, just passively resilient. The other advantage of lowering our loads and having efficient appliances is we're able to make our system smaller. So our heating system is about the size of a mini fridge. That's also our air conditioning. That's also doing humidifying, dehumidifying, air filtering in a very tight house, a very well-controlled envelope. And again, the way that we're approaching that is by thinking we're thinking outside conventional construction, and the home itself is actually in a complete Gore-Tex-like bag. And that, to me, is the only real reliable way to make your home and to be able to control the interior environment of your home. And at a time when we have forest fires, worldwide pandemics, and in general, just increasing pollution, the control of our interior environment, where we spend most of our time breathing more than anywhere else, is super important. And so we've been monitoring the data from air quality monitoring as well. We tried to avoid, an easy way to keep your air quality inside your house good is to just be careful about what you put in your home. So that home in particular was foam free. Foams, particularly the high performing foams, tend to off gas. And so if I am forced to use foams, which I tend not to, I try to make sure they're outside the air envelope so that off gassing is not into the interior climate. Minimize formaldehyde by basically using almost predominantly raw wood products instead of any kind of manufactured engineered products. Minimize PVC, although it was a little bit more challenging, and also trying to be aware of global warming potential and not just using carbon solely as a metric for our pollution. And I should mention the design was, we had a lot of partnerships in this project, and local high school students actually did a lot of the design work, and I was the lead designer, but they brought in this concept from a previous straw bale project. And so it's pretty fun to work with the SOAR program in Crested View, which is a really fantastic educational program. So there's just a sneak peek at some of the techniques, and just bearing in mind that these are all completely code compliant. We had a very favorable building inspector in Gunnison County called Eric Jansen, who was just a pleasure to work with, and we've made this process very, very enjoyable and easy. But basically, everything we did was totally within the code. All of it was prescriptive, actually, and he was very helpful in helping us find the ways to just basically finding things in the code for the things that were a little bit out of the ordinary. The majority of this house was actually traditional techniques. So you can see on the right-hand side slide, that's traditional lath and plaster. I would imagine most of the old homes in Silverton that aren't masonry would have these on partition walls if they're framed. And that's a clay plaster that we put onto the lath, so 1/2 inch of clay plaster in place of a conventional drywall. And then on the left-hand side, those scissor braces you can see, that's just a lighter frame way to block out our joists. And those joists are actually 3 foot on center because our finished floor was 2x6 tongue and groove Colorado pine. And so we were able to avoid a lot of, like I said, manufactured and engineered wood products, and while also using having that as our finish. So our subfloor and our finished floor were all in one. A little tricky to protect that during construction, but it turned out quite nice in the end. We have a sheathingless envelope. So it's a diffusion open wall system, meaning there's no vapor barrier, technically. We have an air barrier or an air control layer on the exterior, which is that Gore-Tex product I previously described. And that allows vapor that does get into the walls to dry seasonally. The wall is 20 inches thick with a combination of cellulose and straw bale. And what happens is during the colder months, particularly towards the spring, moisture starts to build up in those walls. But then because it has that, doesn't have a vapor tight layer like OSB or cement siding or latex paint, and it's able to breathe to the outside and basically dry out. And we put sensors throughout the whole building. And so we're able to know empirically how our envelope is performing. And the highest humidity we've gotten in this wall system was 89% relative humidity, but that was at 25 below zero. And so really in absolute humidity terms, that's very little. And that was right after construction. So our data has shown that it's actually drying out. It's gotten drier progressively since that dip. Here are just a few pictures of some of the methods that we use. So we dense packed the exterior framing. We did conventional framing on the exterior, or advanced framing, but with rough lumber. We put 6 inches of cellulose and then strap bales to the interior. In the attic, we have 2 feet of cellulose insulation. Around the windows, we have cork and wool. Most of 3 of our walls are cellulose straw bale hybrids. And then in our interior walls, we used some recycled denim insulation for sound. And just to give you an idea of how thick that north wall was, in terms of how much insulation is, you could actually walk through it. Here's just a few more pictures. You can see our straw bale again to the interior, which we plastered over with lath. We practiced a few different kinds of techniques because we're trying to use our builds as a classroom and a laboratory, obviously responsibly. Like I said, this is all based on very established techniques in science that I've been fortunate to learn from all over this country, from some of the most respected practitioners. And so, like I said, standing on the shoulder of giants, we're able to build upon the great work from those who've gone before. Habitat, of course, is volunteer based. I was the only, myself and the director were the only employees or paid people on the job, although I'm the construction manager, so I was there full time. But these are students from the local college who are coming to do plaster, which is a pretty fun day because it's just mud basically. Unlike cement or lime, like clay plaster is super forgiving. You don't have to. It doesn't have a chemical reaction, so it's harmless on your skin, and kind of basically like playing with mud. Again, all those materials were either sourced, or sand for the plasters came from within a couple miles. The clay was a combination of 2 different sources, but all from within Colorado. And then, we were very fortunate to get a national award from Habitat International for our build, specifically for best low carbon footprint in 2020. One of our things that was guiding us was that we wanted to not only build an efficient home that focused on local materials, but we also wanted to make something that was beautiful. And we kind of went all out for this flagship build because it was the first build of this kind that Habitat had taken on. So we're pretty happy with the finished result, and then happy to say the homeowners are too. I got a few breaks in here. This isn't the end, but I just wanted to, if anyone had any questions about any of those techniques or anything you've seen already.
Looks great so far. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I have
Big
a
crowd.
question.
Oh, Tyler has a
I have a
question.
question.
Yeah.
And actually, this may even be a question for Jess or somebody that's on the planning commission or Bill that knows, but it says that you use beetle kill for framing. Can we do that under our current code? Jess, do you know, or is Bill online, or does it need to be stamped? We'll ask our code enforcer, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a better question for Bill.
Okay.
I was wondering if Killian could just talk about any times that you may have encountered difficulties within the codes, or if you could talk about what kind of building code Gunnison County is currently working under. I think here in Silverton, we're still under the 2007 or 2006 International Building Code, and I wonder if there's an opportunity to advance our codes and make it easier for some of this construction techniques. Killian,
Yeah. I'll just answer the first question about the beetle kill. Our engineer approved whatever framing I specified. So the engineer essentially is taking on the liability in that case. So it doesn't need to be stamped if your engineer writes off, and at least that's what happened in our situation. Code in general it's not always, updating code doesn't always necessarily give you better results, in the sense that most of the construction experience that I got that kind of enabled me to be in the more progressive end or more experimental end of construction is I lived and worked in Alaska outside of municipalities. I lived in Vermont, where there's pretty much no, you can kind of do what you want. I worked on the Hopi Reservation in Arizona, and all those places were very much outside of a code officials. And so some code can sometimes be restrictive, particularly if it's prescriptive. And the most valuable element of getting progressive construction or into code is having a really good relationship with your inspectors. And so, like I said, we were very lucky that we had a very amenable one who, when I would come to him with a question and say, "Can I do this?" he would say, "I'll get back to you in a couple of hours." And he'd get back with like 3 options. He knew, because he knows the code better than I do, right? And I think attitude, in my experience, makes all the difference in that relationship. So I would say, like, if builders are kind of accusing code officials of being the police, and then code officials are feeling like they're being attacked and not respected, you're probably not going to get the best outcomes. And so it's really about like everyone coming together and deciding, or just understanding people's perspectives and what they're trying to do, because a code official's job is to protect property and inhabitants. That's their job. They're not supposed to be police as such. They're supposed to be guardians of safety. And if that's understood and acknowledged in conversation, as I said, it goes a long way towards progress in these conversations. I don't know what code. I think we're at 2000. Can't remember what year, but it's not the most recent in Gunnison. And like I said, unless you are being restricted by old prescriptive codes, it's really up to the code officials and engineers, whoever's going to take the liability, to figure out whether different methods are acceptable.
And we just had a question from
In the chat.
Commissioner Lashley. Do all of the building techniques that you've used, do they all fit within the fire codes? Like if you're using,
They do.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, actually, straw bale is in the International Building Code, and it has, if installed correctly with at least an inch of plaster, holds up way better than drywall. And actually, and when you start to look at conventional construction through the lens of production, you start to realize that the code is more designed, or has a lot of influence from production builders, like who are trying to build as cheaply quickly as possible. And safety is obviously a concern, but that's also a driving factor. So, drywall is what's, basically what's allowed, what's barely legal. When people say they built a code, I'm always like, well, anything less is illegal. So it's not really something to boast about. Cool. Yeah, any other questions on that? I think so.
Thank you.
All right, kind of touching back on that subject too. I consider myself very fortunate to be in a time when we definitely have the technology to do this. Until the last 5 years, I was still learning a lot about it. But at this point, I'm very confident that we have the simple technology and understanding of building science to be able to build affordable, energy efficient, healthy buildings. The trick is, like I said, with that relationship with code officials, sometimes it's just getting people, change is slow and sometimes difficult. And then that's kind of the hardest thing, is just dealing with the usual human aspects of, I've been doing this for 40 years, so changing this is not comfortable, or I don't, have people, just bringing in more people's perspectives. And so how you approach all these conversations is probably the most important thing. And so, yeah, I just touch on that. Sometimes code enforcement can, or new adoption of codes, or codes can actually, particularly if they're reactive, not necessarily make for better construction. And so my background is in architecture, but with envelope design, I've been a lot more inclined to people who, rather than try to incrementally fix conventional construction, like we add insulation, then we add a vapor barrier, then that starts to leak. So then we, come up with a new product. And companies, particularly in America, are very prone to coming up with solutions to incremental problems and selling those for 5 years, and then 5 years later selling something else. And so the atmosphere that I was trained in this country was more like just start from scratch. So like I mentioned earlier on, our building is wrapped in a complete bag, and most of that above grade is Gore-Tex essentially, and then below grade we have a radon and vapor barrier, and they're completely continuous. So if you see in the bottom right hand corner, that slide, there's a red line along the bottom of the foundation and a blue line up the walls and across the ceiling. To me, that's the only real way to know that you're going to be able to have a controlled interior environment, is to wrap it in a membrane. And that could be OSB or sheathing material. Like ideally, plywood is a better vapor transfer than OSB. But you tape the whole building in some kind of membrane or barrier surface. Like I said, with our building, our building is vapor open, and so it's allowed to have vapor be stored in the cellulosic envelope. And it's really important the materials you use for that, because foams and plastics and petrochemical materials tend to be vapor resistant instead of vapor permeable. And the golden rule from the most mainstream building scientists is you don't want to have a double vapor barrier. You want to assume that vapor is going to get into your wall and that it can get out. So you have to make a way for it to get out. So with a single vapor barrier, your theory is that you can dry it either to the inside or to the outside. And if any of you are familiar with, I don't know if you have much of this in Silverton, but like in mountain towns in particular, because of the cost of property, attic space is not wasted very often. And so there's a lot of cathedral ceilings. And the vast majority of cathedral ceilings I've seen in the last 5 years have a spray foam on the inside, OSB with cellulose and lignin in it, with wood in it. So, natural material that is food essentially. And then they run bituthane over the outside. So that's a double vapor barrier. And it's assuming that vapor is not going to be able to travel through the vapor open rafters and condense underneath that bituthane. But I have a suspicion that we're going to be tearing off roofs in 15 years and finding that spray foam was a mistake in a lot of applications. Even if installed correctly, it's just very difficult to install correctly too. So just focus a little bit on suggestions for how to improve building codes, but yourself as a town. Design, heading it off at the pass is very important. And I think like having design reviews that take into consideration energy modeling and air sealing strategies. So like I said, with in the bottom right hand corner, you can see the cross section of my building. It's very obvious there's a continuous air barrier, right? You get a big red marker on a set of plans, and you get your designer to outline what their strategy is for an air barrier. And hopefully the designer will work with builders to figure out whether that's a buildable detail or not. And again, this is very much the key to making any progress in this way is the relationships. And so kind of not having builders giving out architects, architects giving out builders, and figuring out how to have those conversations for coming together for a common goal, like controlling the interior of your house and having good air quality. And in the meantime, getting your air tightness levels down so you can actually save a lot of energy too, because it's the lowest hanging fruit is air tightness and window and door performance. So I only use, again, if I can, I only use windows and doors that are Passive House certified to the Passive House Institute of the US, just because I know that they're going to be insulatively high value, but also airtight. And yeah, currently in the last 4 homes I've built, none of them have had a higher infiltration rate of 0.4 ACH50. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but that's a very tight home. And that's, like I said, very important for health, air quality, as well as for energy. Again, figuring out some way to discourage the use of foams, I think, is really important. The thing we got to remember about foams is that we know they're toxic. We know they're highly flammable. We know they're vapor closed. And from my own experience working in energy retrofits, they degrade pretty quickly. Cellulose, straw, cork, even sawdust, these are materials that have actually survived over 100 years in use. And so we actually know they work, and we understand how they work. And those are usually locally available and more affordable. Few different ideas on there also, like requiring dedicated mechanical rooms makes a big difference for the systems in a house. We have to acknowledge that we have systems in houses and that they will change, and having a dedicated room for that is really important, not just jamming them underneath staircases or in cupboards. Again, highly recommend avoiding combustion and encourage all electric homes, particularly ones conditioned with heat pump technology. The house, that Habitat house I described, has a heat pump dryer, which uses about 150 watts. It has a heat pump for heating its hot water, an exterior Arctic rated heat pump, that uses a CO2 refrigerant. So the impact of that refrigerant is basically the same as carbon, versus air conditioners and other heat pumps can have really high refrigerant values, like thousands or hundreds of times higher than carbon. And just avoiding combustion is good for air quality, safety, and cost. Like I said, if you don't have to put gas into your house, and that saves you those tap fees. You've got some interesting companies in your area, particularly Timber Age. I'm not super familiar with them, but it's just I'm intrigued by their systems for using local materials, using mass lumber. We're in our county in Gunnison, we're talking about mileage stickers for homes, so that the energy use of a home is part of what has to be declared during sale. If you have a like a very efficient home that has low loads, low energy loads, it's very easy to go net zero by using solar with pretty affordable systems. So the home that I showed you has a 5.5 kilowatt system, but in January of last year, it produced 3 times the energy it used in that month. And in August, it was 8 to 10 times. So we could make that system a lot smaller. That could be a 2 kilowatt system, which makes solar a lot more affordable. Partly why we had that solar system that size was, well, we didn't know the building was going to perform so well, but also because our habitat lots are in a street, we're building one home at a time, and we're able to power the construction of our current home off the excess energy from our last home. And we have enough excess energy even still from that to be able to drive 100 miles a day in a Chevy Bolt. So while we're not putting in EV charging technology into our homes, we are designing it for the future so that that can easily be adapted. And when you look at energy EV charging from solar rooftops, all of a sudden the cost of photovoltaic panels looks very appealing, particularly with Ford F-150 coming out with their electric truck next year. You could spend $1,500 to $3,000 on fuel a year, assuming the prices don't continue to go up. Or if you have a solar system like that one, you could drive 30 miles a day for free. And I think that's a really important dynamic that's going to greatly shift the energy conversation over the next 3 years or 5 years or so. Yeah, not to mention its energy independence. Yeah, and then also the ability for those cars to actually run your home off them. So that's all happening, and utilities are surprisingly not prepared for that, and that I've become aware of, because in theory, in 3 years, you could have a quarter of the homes in cities charging huge electric vehicles. So I think incentivizing solar charging during the day would actually be very beneficial to utilities. In general, the homes that we build going forward, we have energy production and usage monitoring on all our systems and all our appliances. We have, like I said, humidity and temperature monitoring within our envelope to see how our systems are performing and how our envelope is performing. We have air quality monitoring. We have light quality monitoring. Yeah, that's the way we, basically how we learn and how we get better. Yeah, I'll just skip to as part of like how I've been able to achieve some of the kind of integration of these different technologies. Oops, maybe I don't have it anymore. I don't. Oh, there we go. Construction modeling. So I essentially build the house stick by stick before I ever break ground. And so it's very much a prefab building in how I approach the construction of it. So if you see in the bottom right corner, I make framing drawings, and particularly with volunteers, it's very useful to be able to have things be pretty straightforward. And I can just hand them a sheet of paper and know that if they follow that, we're pretty good. Turns out it actually works for skilled carpenters too. The 3D modeling also helps with systems integration and avoiding conflict. So I'm able to know exactly where my duct is going to go, where my wires are going to go. For the most part, there's always something that comes up. And it does depend how open to this method of building that your subcontractors are. But like in commercial realm, this has been done for decades, just because it's so expensive. And I think there's somewhat of residential is a little bit different because the stakes aren't as high, and general contractors tend to let subs figure stuff out themselves. But for me, I want to make sure that I know what my finished details are and that all my systems don't have conflicts. And then in the bottom left corner, you can see the detail, like using 3D modeling or construction modeling, you can really understand exactly how everything goes together, which is informative to an experienced designer or for someone who's learning. And so I think this is a very fast way for someone to understand construction. And we're trying to expand our habitat program to involve students in the next couple of years with some local, with our university, Western University, and the Cold Harbor Institute.
Killian, I just want to
yes.
pause there real quick. We are running a little bit behind on our agenda here.
Okay.
So was wondering if you had some kind of final wrap-up points, and then we're going to kind of move on with our agenda. But I think all this information is really pertinent, and I really like how you laid it out here. I was just trying to be conscious of everyone's time.
Yes, no, thank you. And sorry, this is an excerpt from a lot longer presentation, which I'm happy to give at a different, a later time if anyone's interested. Basically, I think it's really exciting that you have, is it Beth Kramer, who was on earlier, has a sustainability position. Is that correct?
She's our economic development.
Okay. Well, like getting support and reaching out to organizations who've done this before, I think is really important. In our community, there's a lot of momentum around this now, so not too dissimilar to yourselves. While we have some construction on the ground that we're already learning from, it's still pretty new to this community too, but we have a lot of resources in our community as well as outside that are up on that screen right now. So I think if Silverton is looking to go for more sustainability in their housing choices, you can basically hit, if you focus on local materials and local resources, you can kind of have it all, but you have to think differently about it, and you have to be open to change and to new ideas. And we're certainly not figuring everything out, but I think that's been a key in how our community has been able to make strides in this way. Is because we have open ears and trying to learn from those that have gone before and then build upon their success. If there's people in your community that have experience doing that, those would be people I'd reach out to. But I would advocate strongly for having third-party guidance in doing that. That's something that I've seen in organizations that I've been involved in. Is like, while good people and good intentions don't always get good results, it's important to have someone who is a bit more objective help guide that process sometimes. And that's something that a community has to recognize it needs. Like hiring a consultant to come in and tell you what to do is not very successful. And in particular, Hopi Tutskwa permaculture that I worked for in the Hopi reservation, that was their model. Was they were community organized, they recognized they needed help, and they reached out to get expertise to come in and help, but not take over. I think that's a very important aspect in getting higher goals. Yeah.
Thank you. And I will mention that on your website, you do have an extensive presentation there as well. So if anyone wants to dive into this a little bit more, there's an extensive presentation there.
Please, and yeah, anyone that's watching, please feel free to reach out. My email is up there. And yes, some but not all of my work is on that web page. And if anyone's passing through Gunnison, the most effective way I found to explain what we're doing is to give you a site tour. And so luckily our homeowners of their finished homes as well as the ones in construction are always open to that. So please feel welcome.
Thank you so much, Killian.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Killian, thank you so much for coming and talk to us. I find it really interesting. You're presenting a different style of building than what we typically see here. Right now, all the new construction is zip wall technology and the sorts. So interesting to see some different methods. The town of Silverton is interested in breaking ground on an affordable housing project. And I think here construction is extremely challenging. Cost of labor is really high and difficult to get skilled people here in town to do the work. Also, material costs are extremely high. So I wonder if you have any tips on how we can look towards planning for this project and trying to be as conscious as we can economically with taxpayer money.
Sure. Like I said, I always advocate for looking at the envelope first, rather than looking at systems, and try to reduce your load, and then that lowers your systems. Some of the techniques that I showed are very kind of on the far end of being very environmental and focusing locally. You can do a lot without having to go to that end of the spectrum. ZIP isn't a terrible system. The R board I don't use the R board because of that foam for a bunch of reasons. I just don't trust it long-term, and structurally we're putting our shear layer between 3/4 of an inch of foam that I'm pretty confident will break down in the next 20 years. But the sheathing, the zip sheathing as a system as a concept without the foam, being able to tape those seams. I just finished a home that I designed up in Crested Butte that is a passive house. Well, it's not actually certified, but it's that level of performance. And we did a zip skin, and we were able to blow, I think it was 0.2 ACH 50, extremely tight. So with the zip system, the tape system, you can get a pretty high performance airtight home. I would advocate for using cellulose above ground in almost any application. You just have to make sure you understand the vapor profile of your envelope. I would say, like I said, it's very doable with all the materials that you have to do really well, and to focus on avoiding the highest damaging materials and adding to performance. Windows and doors, you have to spend more money on windows and doors and typically look outside of American manufacturers. There are some, like we got our windows from the Front Range from Longmont, from Alpine Windows, and they use a European system, but they're made in Colorado. So they're high performance windows, passive pass certified. So that's an easy way to substitute, for design that's already there. And you were going to get used to having thicker walls. And there's a whole conversation about property appraisal and square footage that we could get into. But I think I'm happy to give you my thoughts if you have designs, but it's very doable and even incrementally.
Do you guys use any panelized construction or offsite construction, and what kind of effect does that have on the bottom line?
Yeah, I haven't gotten too much into I've been involved with companies that have done like prefab straw bale and passive house, like Phoenix House in Grand Junction. If you're familiar with them, they do passive house certified wall panel systems. They're pretty expensive. Those are anyway, Phoenix House. But our home this time around, partly because of lumber prices were crazy, we got our wall systems as well as our trusses built by the We Build program, which is a vocational program at the Crowley Prison. And so that actually worked out fantastic. We, I think it's on the website, but we put up our walls and our roof in 4 hours. We pre-built the walls on the ground with shear bracing, with the siding, with the barrier, and we craned it in 4 hours. So if you can get pre-made wall systems, like just literally just framed up walls, that can help. It arrived on the back of a trailer, a roll-off trailer, and we had all our walls and trusses ready to go. So part of it is like where you find that material, and if labor rates are high. Most modular homes tend to have pretty bad materials in terms of just cheap and chemically not very sound or healthy materials. And so that's why I'm wary of modular building. But in Europe, that's it's a lot more common in Europe for homes to be prefab. And so I think that a lot of technology is making its way over, particularly with standards like passive house. So certainly something I'd look into. That's why I mentioned Timber Age. I think they'd be worth looking into as a local partner who uses local materials and has kind of a stomach for this kind of thing, for progressive building.
Thank you again, Killian.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Okay. Great. That's exciting. So we'll move on to number 4. New business.
Sure.
There. Okay. First, 4A, consideration to allocate 2021 funding for the Creative District General Operating Funds. And I see Carol's here, so.
And Carol has prepared a slide presentation for the Creative District Asked, and we are putting that up now. You might want to share your screen for that one so that our YouTube and others can see it. Just go to this main screen there. What's that? And then you go down to share screen, like right next to where you stop video, but
Too much tea.
raise hand. Okay, there you go.
It's only just begun.
There you go. And then you can drag that whole thing over so that everyone can see it.
Set. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Town Trustees. I'm Carol Wilkins, the Chair of the Silverton Creative District. Our organization was founded in 2019, and we are celebrating 2 years in operation this month. Kelly, could you go to the next slide, please?
And just scroll down. There you go.
In 2019, the creative industries in Colorado have contributed $13.7 billion to our state's economy. Sales of goods and services statewide are $31.6 billion. On the Western Slope alone, the creative industries have produced $1.7 billion in sales. These figures are from the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. And as you can see, the creative economy in Colorado is very robust and growing. Next slide, please, Kelly. So we're all concerned about our quality of life and the benefits of how a creative district can contribute to a healthy community. And those are attracting new and creative entrepreneurs, enhancing economic and civic capital, celebrating and strengthening community identity, and showcasing cultural and artistic organizations and events. A prime example of this is Ridgway. Ridgway was one of the first communities to receive their state certification as a creative district. When you visit Ridgway today, it's a vibrant community. There are new shops and restaurants popping up on the back streets, making it inviting to the local community as well as visitors. They have a strong sense of community, are involved with neighboring towns to bring a quality of life to the residents. Weehawken Creative Arts has been involved with our community for some time now, and they offer different youth activities that the kids can be involved in. Next slide, please, Kelly. Excuse me. So a little bit about the Silverton Creative District. As I mentioned earlier, we were founded in 2019. We are an all-volunteer nonprofit 501c3 organization. And our mission is to support the growth and sustainability of arts and culture in Silverton and San Juan County, and to provide economic prosperity for our artists and our community. Next slide. So this slide lists our board members, myself as chair, Christine Fauner is our vice chair, Wesley Berg is our treasurer, Lisa Branner is our acting secretary, and Ken Webb is our member at large. We are always looking for community involvement, whether that be a seat on our board or volunteer opportunities. Next slide, thank you. This slide shows the accomplishments we have made in the past 2 years. I do want to mention that, like all other organizations, COVID-19 really slowed us down, but we have rallied back and are accomplishing many great things in spite of this. We've continued the First Fridays Art Walk this summer and held an art off during the August First Friday events, and we are seeing a growth in this event each month and each year. We are planning on the Mistletoe Market again this December. It wasn't able to happen last year for obvious reasons. We're bringing back the Silverton Arts Festival in June of 2022. It's an outdoor venue that will be held on historic Blair Street. We partnered with the Residency Project in June, which had 6 artists come here from all over the country and stay for 2 weeks. And this will become a staple in our community, and we are looking forward to working with them this coming year. We partnered with San Juan County Health, Silverton School, Town of Silverton, and Rise Above Colorado to bring the youth mural that you see at 1148 Blair Street on the wall that faces the bent elbow. We also partner with the Southwest Creative Corridor to make our part of the state known for our arts. This circle encompasses Telluride, Cortez, Mancos, Durango, Ignacio, Silverton, and ends in Ouray. We have a website, silvertoncreativedistrict.org. We've created a Silverton Arts Map as well as online community events calendar that can be found on our website as well as the Chamber of Commerce website. And we are working towards Silverton becoming a certified creative district through the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade. Once we have this certification, this will open our organization, the town and county up to many grants that we can apply for. This is a long process, and I don't expect our organization to apply for a couple of years. We're working to build organizational capacity and create a track record of successful projects and programs, which will help demonstrate the sustainability of the SCD when we do apply. Next slide. Thank you. So a little bit more information about the aforementioned Silverton Arts Festival and Avalanche of the Arts. The dates will be June 17th through the 19th of 2022. This may become a 2-day show as opposed to a 3-day show. We're still in the planning stages of this event. We will be reviving a beloved community tradition. It's been over 17 years since the Art Festival was in town. There have been several attempts by different entities in the past to revive this event without any luck. But we are hoping to make this a lasting tradition that our townspeople, neighboring communities, and visitors will put on their schedules each year at the 3rd week of June to visit Silverton. For our first year, we expect 30 to 50 artist exhibitors with 300 to 500 attendees. The festival will take place on Blair Street, which not only benefits Blair Street, but the entire downtown business district. We expect this event to generate overnight stays, not only for the artists themselves, but for the public. This would be one more thing to do in Silverton for the weekend, so why not stay a night or two? The Arts Festival is free to attend. There will be live music or theatrical performances, as well as art workshops, which will be free to the public and therefore accessible to all regardless of economic status. And we would like this to be our flagship event. Next slide, please. So the Silverton Creative District has successfully applied for a number of grants to support our work and our mission. To date, we have received financial support from the Ballantyne Family Foundation, El Pomar Foundation, the Community Foundation Serving Southwest Colorado, and the San Juan County Tourism Board. We have also raised $3,000 in membership and individual donations this year. We would like to invite the town to support our efforts with a $5,000 contribution for general operating support for 2021. Your contribution and partnership will underwrite our mission and programs, including the Arts Festival. As I mentioned earlier, we are already in the planning stages for 2022, so contribution now will support next year's festival. We're currently working on a skeletal budget, and your contribution would help us tremendously. We have many great ideas for events, with these being a way to bring our local community together as well as encouraging visitors. We will provide promotional benefits to the town of Silverton at our events and in our advertising. For example, logo placement in advertising and on posters, a banner at the event, etc. This partnership would show your support of diversification of our local economy, as well as enhancing the quality of life for our residents. This ask has a twofold purpose. When we apply to the state for certification to become a creative district, a requirement of the application is to show community buy-in by our local government. This will help to provide evidence of your endorsement of the creative district. Next slide. Thank you for your time and consideration in helping to support the Silverton Creative District. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Carol.
I have one. I don't know. I think it's in our packet. We created a budget ask form. Did you see that? Also, I believe it
That's
was in the
2022, correct? Yeah, so this is for 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is what we talked about.
Yeah.
They will be coming back with a 2022 request, but this one is for this year.
For this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the 2021 budget has $5,000 available in it to put towards the project.
The general fund does.
Well, but it's supposed to come out of our good deeds fund, which is set up. And what did we put in there?
5,000.
Right, so that would take everything. that we have.
And
for
why
the
does it
good
have to
deeds.
come out of good deeds and not general?
Because because we already have something
Because it's beyond
budgeted.
the request.
Well, no,
Period.
because it's already budgeted.
Mhm.
So that was something that we did a few years ago because so many organizations always came up and asked, can you give us this? Can you give us this? And so we put 5,000 in our good deeds fund for the board to do at their discretion, how to use it. So that's why I was asking, 'cause I don't think we had spent anything
Okay.
so far
And if
in the 2020 budget. So we don't have to file anything supplementary.
we're coming up to it, yeah, we're a couple months away from the end of the fiscal year. Are we foreseeing any other asks of this nature?
Have we had anything?
I have not had any other asks right now.
I mean, because if we don't have anything else, we're coming to the end of the fiscal year, then.
Shane, you got a statement or question?
I just have a quick question. I was curious what the scope of the Good Deeds Fund was, because I think some of the times that we get asked for a waiver of fees or a contribution of funds, it really is just truly a altruistic action on behalf of the town. This one seems like, at least the case that's being made is that this directly and positively impacts the town socially, culturally, and financially. And so I was just wondering if this falls within the Good Deeds Fund or something different.
And I was not here at the establishment of the Good Deeds Fund, but I do know that there is funds in it.
Well, and then we just don't have to file anything supplementary. You don't have to actually go through and create a new position for the audit if we use it from something that's already allocated. So that's the whole point too. I don't think it's matter. It's always up to the board's discretion. What we use it for.
Just to, Shane, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm running the meeting at this point or if you are, but just to get a general idea of support from the board on the $5,000 in general before we move into a different discussion about how to fund it. That makes sense.
And I defer to you. There's still a little bit of technical jittering on my end, so I think it's probably going to be smoother if you continue to run it.
Do we have general support from the board for the $5,000 to support the creative district?
Yeah, I'd say I'm totally in favor.
Yeah.
Show of hands.
So we're showing hands.
Yeah.
Well, I think.
I love what you do. I'm a silver member
Mhm.
and I support this.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Do we need a motion on this one?
Need a motion for this one.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to support the Silverton Creative District with the $5,000 out of our Good Deeds Fund from the board. A 2021 ask.
I can second it.
Okay, roll call, please, Kelly.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Absolutely.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Beerma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Carmen.
Yes, and I just want to clarify that this may not necessarily preclude any further good deed asks, because I'm not totally positive that this needs to be out of the Good Deeds Fund. But yes, I support the motion.
Thank you.
Such an asset to the town. Thank you so much for your efforts.
This is really going to help us a lot. And on behalf of our board and all of our volunteers, thank you very much for this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time and effort. Okay, moving on to 4B, consideration to approve a marijuana license renewal application from Cole Davenport.
And this is a reapplication and has been reviewed by both Mr. McDougall and Kelly, and they have signed off on it.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to accept the renewal for the retail operation license for Cole Davenport.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Beerma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Vernon.
Yes.
Okay, 4C, Resolution 2021-11A, resolution adopting a policy regarding the handling of personal identifying information, PII, including protection, destruction, and security breach reporting.
So this resolution is a housekeeping item to allow me to access the Department of Revenue's website to view our sales tax in real time. Currently, we rely on Willie to send me the information, but after I submit this resolution with the required paperwork, I'll be able to access the data myself and look at who's paying their sales tax, how much, and when. This also helps us establish a PPI protection within our own departments. And then establishes good practices when handling personal information, and we'll be reviewing our policies at our next staff meeting.
I think this is wonderful. I think it's a long time past due. We have so much more going on here that we really need to be able to keep firsthand real-time information for the town of Silverton. So I definitely appreciate this coming forward. It will help also with financial committee in order for us to make some really sound decisions. So this is a resolution. Okay, so I would like to make a motion to accept resolution number 2021-11, a resolution of the town of Silverton regarding the handling of personal identifying information, PII, including protection, destruction, and security breach reporting.
Did we need any discussion on that, or?
I'll second
Yeah,
it.
the staff recommendation is there and it seems pretty straightforward.
I do have a quick question though. I am seconding, but I do have a quick question. We're not stepping on anyone's toes over at county. We're not stepping on Willie's toes or anything like that.
Willie actually recommended that we do this.
Right on, Willie. Perfect. All right.
Okay, so a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Kelly.
Trustee Barella.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Leonard.
Yes.
Trustee Bearma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Vernon.
Yes.
Okay, item 4D, consideration to draft a letter of support for Silverton Single Track Society to continue with their Bakers Park plan and pursue grant funding.
And I was not giving the information on which grants they are applying for, but they had requested an updated letter of recommendation. We have supported them in the past financially in June and in December, both $10,000.
And right, and a former letter.
And so this is just another letter saying we support their.
Correct. So as they go into their
Project.
grant cycles, they can start using us as letters of support, for letters of support.
Right, I noticed online that they've raised almost $30,000 towards the $50,000 goal. So I think they've got really good momentum. And I would support a motion unless there's additional discussion. Is there any opposition to the letter?
The only thing I see on the letter is that it's signed by Mayor Christine Tukey, but
Correct?
probably update that. Yeah.
I assumed that was in there as a model or an example of something we've done in the past.
Yes.
Not that we were sending that precise letter out. Okay, great.
Oh, this is fantastic. We should support this.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the rewriting and new date and new signature of the support letter for the Silverton Single Track Society.
Second.
Roll call, please, Kelly.
Trustee Barella.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Leonard.
Yes.
Trustee Bearma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Vernon.
Yes.
All right, we're on a roll. Lots of agreement. So we have 4F, consideration, nope, sorry, first reading of ordinance 2021-07.
4E.
Excuse me, 4E. Consideration to approve unbudgeted expense for the purchase of laptops and cell phones.
So the staff has been making do with what they have these last couple of years with the uncertainty of COVID and being very budget conscious. And I really commend them for their effort, but it's really not safe to keep operating this way. My goal is to get staff off their personal devices and return their personal equipment that they have lent the town and create a functional work environment. So the funds I'm requesting would come out of the general fund, out of the line items that you see there. We would go over those line items and then I would do a reconciliation at the end of the year for the budget in order to make up for that deficit. And then we just don't have those funds currently in our budget, but we do have the funds to pay for this.
Okay, so this was something that we discussed very heavily at our last financial committee meeting based on the issues that we're even having in here and how much this needs to be done. We had actually started planning for this last year before COVID with John, because we knew this needed to happen then. And so I am 100% in support for this. I couldn't encourage this because we have a bit of a surplus. I couldn't encourage this more. Needs to happen.
And I want to tell you, we were very budget conscious in looking at this. There's a sale, and that's kind of why I brought it to you now. And then we were looking at AutoCAD, which is $1,700 a year for a subscription. But Clark and Lisa found SketchUp Pro, because we've been using actually Lisa's personal AutoCAD license.
From 1997.
From 1997. So this would bring us up to date with Sketchbook Pro, which is actually a lot cheaper. SketchUp Pro.
And she can use that program and she's familiar with it. It's not going to be a big burden.
Clark is familiar with it and he can train her.
Okay, I know those programs are really.
He's willing to train John Sites as well.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea and we should do it now while we have the monies for it.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the unbudgeted expense for the purchase of laptops, cell phones, monitors, and other IT equipment needed by staff.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Brewer,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Beerma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes,
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
thank you. Okay. Now moving on to 4F. The first reading of ordinance 2021-07 revisions in municipal code, section 10-6-50A, definition of a minor for sales of cigarettes and tobacco products. Here I may need a refresher. I think on the first reading, we do read it out loud in our meetings.
In full, yes. And then we publish it in the newspaper in full 10 days prior to the formal consideration for adoption, which should be October 11th.
Okay, so that's the process, and I think this reading defaults to me at this point. Am I correct? I'm not wearing a mask this time and it's not nearly as long. So here we go. Ordinance number 2021-07, an ordinance of the town of Silverton, Colorado, repealing and replacing portions of the town's municipal code to prohibit the sale of cigarettes and tobacco products to persons under 21 years of age. Whereas the town of Silverton, Colorado, the town is a statutory town under the laws of the state of Colorado, and whereas the town's municipal code must be updated from time to time to comply with the laws of the state of Colorado, and whereas pursuant to CRS 31-15-103, the town has the power to make and publish ordinances for carrying into effect and discharging the powers and duties conferred to it by the laws of the state of Colorado. And whereas pursuant to CRS 25-14-3012, the sale of cigarette or tobacco products to a person under 21 years of age is prohibited. And whereas the board hereby finds and declares it necessary to amend the town's municipal code to prohibit the sale of cigarettes and tobacco products, persons under 21 years of age in order to comply with the laws of the state of Colorado. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Trustees of the Town of Silverton, Colorado. 1, Section 10-6-50 of the town's municipal code is repealed in its entirety, along with all ordinances that have amended the sections and reenacted as follows. A, for the purposes of this section, the following words shall have the meanings ascribed hereafter. Cigarette means pre-manufactured cigarettes and or hand-rolled cigarettes. Tobacco products means cigars. Oh gosh, you guys. Cheroots, stogies, periques, granulated, plug cut, crimp cut, ready rubbed, and other smoking tobacco, snuff, snuff flower, Cavendish, plug and twist tobacco, fine cut and other chewing tobaccos, shorts, refuse scraps, clippings, cutting, and sweepings of tobacco and other kinds and forms of tobacco, prepared in such a manner as to be suitable for chewing, smoking in a pipe, or otherwise, or both for chewing and smoking. B, any person who knowingly furnishes to a person under 21 years of age by gift, sale, or any other means, any cigarettes or tobacco products commits an offense and, upon conviction thereof, shall be punished by a fine of $200. It shall be an affirmative defense to a prosecution under this subsection that the person furnishing the cigarettes or tobacco products was presented with and reasonably relied upon a valid state driver's license or other government-issued form of identification which identified the person receiving the cigarettes or tobacco products as being 21 years of age or older. C, any person under 21 years of age who purchases or attempts to purchase any cigarettes or tobacco products and or is found to be in possession of any cigarettes or tobacco products commits an offense and, upon conviction thereof, shall be punished by a fine of $100, except that, following a conviction or adjudication for a first offense under this subsection, the municipal court, in lieu of the fine, may sentence the person to participate in a tobacco education program. The court may allow such person to perform community service and be granted credit against the fine and court costs at the rate of $5 for each hour of work performed for up to 50% of the fine and court costs. D, no retailer shall sell or permit the sale of cigarettes or tobacco products by use of a vending machine or other coin-operated machine, except that cigarettes may be sold at retail through vending machines only in 1, factories, businesses, offices, or other places not open to the general public. 2, places to which minors are not permitted access at any time during the day or night. Or 3, places where the vending machine is under the direct supervision of the owner of the establishment or an adult employee of the owner, including but not limited to establishments holding a valid liquor license issued pursuant to Article 47 of Title 12 CRS. E, any person who sells or offers to sell any cigarettes or tobacco products shall display a warning sign as specified in this subsection. Said warning sign shall be displayed in a prominent place in the building and on such machine at all times. Shall have a minimum height of 3 inches and a width of 6 inches and shall read as follows. Warning, it is illegal for any person under 21 years of age to purchase cigarettes and tobacco products, and upon conviction, a $100 fine may be imposed. F, any violation of subsection E above shall not constitute a violation of any other provision of this section. 2, the repeal or modification of any provision of the Silverton Municipal Code by this ordinance shall not release, extinguish, alter, modify, or change in whole or in part any penalty, forfeiture, or liability, either civil or criminal, which shall have been incurred under such provision, and each provision shall be treated and held as still remaining in force for the purpose of sustaining any and all proper actions, suits, proceedings, and prosecutions for the enforcement of the penalty, forfeiture, or liability, as well as for the purpose of sustaining any judgment, decree, or order which can or may be rendered, entered, or made in such actions, suits, proceedings, or prosecutions. 3, all other ordinances or portions thereof inconsistent or conflicting with this ordinance or any portion hereof are hereby repealed or modified to the extent of such inconsistency or conflict. 4, pursuant to CRS 31-16-105, this ordinance shall take effect and be in force on the 30th day after it has been published. Introduced, approved on first reading and ordered published once in full on this day of 2021. And then there's a place for signature of the second reading, Town of Silverton, Colorado, signed by Kelly Freeze and Shane Furman, Mayor. Okay, so that was the first reading.
I'm sorry, we have another.
Oh, right, back to back. We don't need to do anything with this one until I read the next one.
Right.
I think we need to do a motion to approve that reading.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Oh, and I was going to say, thank you, Kelly, for finding this discrepancy and bringing it to the attention of the board and for all the hard work that staff did to create this.
This was brought to us actually by Public Health.
Oh, that's right. Becky found it.
Yeah, like I saw this.
Okay, I'm prepared for teenagers. I know all their choices. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance?
Sure, I can make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2021-07, revisions in municipal code section 10-6-50A, definition of a minor for sales of cigarette and tobacco products.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Trustee Barilla,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Firma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Okay, now we will do the first reading of ordinance number 2021-08, an ordinance of the town of Silverton, Colorado, repealing and replacing portions of the town's municipal code to reorganize the Parks, Recreation, and Facilities Committee and redefine the purpose of the ordinance and Personnel Committee. Whereas the town of Silverton, Colorado, the town, is a statutory town under the laws of state of Colorado, and whereas the town's municipal code may be updated from time to time, and whereas pursuant to CRS 31-15-103, the town has the power to make and publish ordinances for carrying into effect and discharging the powers and duties conferred to it by the laws of the state of Colorado. And whereas the board finds and declares it necessary to update the town's municipal code and combine the duties of the Parks, Recreation, and Facilities Committee with the Building and Grounds Committee. And whereas the board finds and declares it necessary to update the town's municipal code to redefine the purpose of the Ordinance and Personnel Committee. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the Board of Trustees of the Town of Silverton, Colorado. 1, Sections 2-2-220A, 2-2-230, and 2-2-260 of the town's municipal code are repealed in their entirety, along with all ordinances that have amended the sections and reenacted as follows. Section 2-2-220, standing committees. A, the standing committees shall consist of 3 members each and are as follows. 1, Parks, Recreation, and Facilities. 2, Public Safety. 3, Public Utilities. 4, Ordinance and Personnel. B, all standing committees shall do and perform such other acts and duties as may be required by the Board of Trustees, this code and the ordinance of the town, and such other acts and duties as shall reasonably come under their jurisdiction. Section 2-2-230, Parks, Recreation, and Facilities Committee. The Parks, Recreation, and Facilities Committee have general supervision over all matters appertaining to the parks, recreation activities, facilities, cemetery, and open space for the town. Section 2-2-260, Ordinance and Personnel Committee. The Ordinance and Personnel Committee shall have general supervision over revisions and updates to ordinances and select personnel matters. 2, Section 2-2-270 of the town's municipal code is repealed in its entirety. 3, all other ordinances or portions thereof inconsistent or conflicting with this ordinance or any portion hereof are hereby repealed or modified to the extent of such inconsistency or conflict. 4, pursuant to CRS 31-16-105, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced on the 30th day after it has been published. introduced, approved on first reading and ordered published once in full on this blank day of blank 2021. There's a signature spot for the second reading and date, Town of Silverton, Colorado. Attest Kelly Freeze, Town Clerk, Shane Furman, Mayor. Do we have any discussion or comment on the first reading of this ordinance?
No.
Okay, discuss this in the work session on committees. Is there a motion to approve?
I can make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2021-08 revisions in the municipal code section 2-2-220A, 2-2-230 and 2-2-260, replacing portions for the code to reorganize the Parks, Recreation and Facilities Committee and redefine the purpose of the Ordinance and Personnel Committee.
Thanks, Jordan. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please, Kelly.
Trustee Barolo.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Wager.
Yes.
Trustee Grandma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Okay, and now this was the addition to the agenda for H regarding the letter of support for planning grant program.
So the Southwest COG is applying for funding via San Juan County, so they'll be the fiscal agent to House Bill 1271. It's IHOP Planning Grant Program, not the pancakes. The Southwest COG will be working with Housing Solutions for Southwest and several other consultants to help develop a coordinated planning effort across the region. The goal is to streamline the process for development of affordable houses to be so we can attract developers to build out that 830 units that came out of the regional report that we need. So we could kind of leverage funds and be able to purchase large amounts of construction materials for lower prices if we could implement this plan. So basically, this is a non-binding letter of support for the grant application. In the event the request is funded, an MOU would be issued, but funding for the MOU development is also included in the grant costs. So Southwest COG does not expect to request funding from the jurisdictions for matching this grant.
Okay, good, because I read that 25% in there.
Staff would recommend a letter of support.
Is there any opposition to a letter of support? And do you need a motion for this?
I would, yes. I'm bringing all letters of support to you all.
Yep, Shane.
Yeah, just a quick question. Maybe I missed it, but this grant was already applied for, yeah? Because I saw in the criteria memo that there was a deadline of September 20th. So I just wanted to make sure that this was already in motion. We're cool.
No, it hasn't been applied for yet. It's on a monthly basis. That was just the first round was on the 20th, but then they're applying on a monthly basis. So the next time they'll apply, they hope to have it all together before our October 11th meeting to get their application in early. So that is why I'm bringing it to the board.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to accept the letter that's in our additional packet for, oh, come on, what are we calling this? What are we calling it?
Southwest.
Yeah, letter of support.
Letter of support for the South San Juan County's application for the proposed planning grant program to coordinate with Southwest COG.
There you go.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please, Kelly.
Trustee Barolo.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Wager.
Yes.
Trustee Grandma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Who seconded?
I did.
Okay, moving on to number 5, approval of consent agenda items. Any comments or anything that stood out on that? Kelly, I'm really grateful for your notes on the side there.
Mhm.
We just- Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Who's second?
Jordan.
Cameron.
And roll call, please, Kelly.
Trustee Berla,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Bearma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Perman.
Yes.
Okay, number 6, staff reports.
And I'll keep this very brief because it is in the packet. But I have attached my administrator goals that you all had approved at our work session. And basically, these goals are how I will be graded on my performance and in my performance review, and will also help provide direction for staff. All my other projects are in there. I just wanted to double check with you all that October 11th is Columbus Day. We do have a meeting scheduled for that day. We do not recognize it as a day off for town employees, but wanted to be conscious of that for you all if we can proceed with that meeting.
So we will have a meeting October 11th.
Yes.
Yep.
With your all permission. Excellent.
Yeah, we looked at these goals in a work session last week and made glowing comments about them. So thanks, Gloria. And we can now move on to number 7.
Oh, we're not going to have any discussion on any of the staff reports.
Oh, sorry, discussion on staff reports.
Okay, so I'd like to know from the memo in our packets, with what happened up at Boulder Intake, have we had any word yet back from the CDPE or whatever their acronym is?
And that would be a question for John Seitz. So there is a memo as we get him on. Is he on? There he is.
I'm on.
Okay, do we have any updates on how long they said to flush, how long we have to keep that intake closed? Do we have any information yet?
They haven't given me as much detail as I would like.
Oh.
The main contact that I have with the health department is not that concerned about the oil based on the safety data sheet that is also in your packet. It's listed as a non-toxic substance primarily. He did recommend that we do organic chemical testing, which we're going to do tomorrow morning. I wanted to wait until I heard back from ExxonMobil. They have not replied to my request other than letting me know that it was in the queue. If anyone has any contacts at ExxonMobil that are mid to high level, get on them and have them respond to our request. They should respond to our request with a detailed list of chemicals that are in that product. But for now, we're simply continually trying to clean it, flush it. And tomorrow morning, we'll be taking some labs for organic chemicals that were suggested by our lab based upon the ingredients that were in the safety data sheet. The problem with safety data sheets is that companies don't publish all of the chemicals that are in their product because they're proprietary. They don't want to get their recipe stolen. So when we hear back from ExxonMobil, we may do another round of testing, but I have no intention of putting that source online to our water plant at any time in the near future. That's pretty much the summary, other than what's in your packet, my report. That's the update at this time, but I'm glad to take any questions.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you, John. Just wondering what the status was.
Great. Any other discussion on staff reports or questions for John? Okay, now we'll go to committee reports, item 7, starting with a finance committee meeting.
Do you guys mind if I give the update?
Absolutely.
Awesome meeting. Okay.
Yeah, it was a great meeting. It was a really long meeting, but it was really needed. We went through every line item of the budget and you guys really helped me out. So thank you for that. This year we are formalizing our nonprofit budget requests. So the finance committee and I put together a form that is on our website, or you can pick one up at City Hall to be turned in by October 15th. And then with presentations to be scheduled at a work session, October 18th through the 22nd. And was wondering if we had the capacity to set that date now for a work session, October 18th through the 22nd, to hear the nonprofit presentations after they turn in their official form. And I already received one.
Fun.
Okay.
That's the third week of October.
That's an off meeting week.
Yes.
But we have a finance committee meeting on the morning of the 18th.
Monday at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we're trying to do this as an evening work session in between the 18th to the 22nd that week. Because we need to be able to have this in our budget. So
Would the
that's why it's
18th
vital.
work?
Yep. What's that?
Does the 18th work?
Does for me.
Works for me.
At 6 or at 7? 7.
Okay.
18th at 7.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I've also included a budget timeline. Let me just write that note real quick. Budget timeline that includes department head work session taking place October 4th through the 8th. So this would be the department heads presenting their portion of the budget to you all sometime during October 4th through the 8th, and was wondering if we could set that date now. The first draft of the budget will be presented next meeting at October 11th. So our deadlines are fast approaching. It's another off week.
The 4th through the 8th of October.
Yes.
I will be gone that week. I'm taking an ambulance to get repairs in Denver.
It's a tough week for me as well.
Monday is a tough day, but the other days are better.
Or another option would be to do it that on the 11th before the budget's presented. I just wouldn't be able to make those changes right away, but we would still be able to hit our deadline.
How about on the 11th
Before our regular meeting.
at 5:30 or at 6?
You're talking in the 11th of October. Okay, back to that one.
I could do that. Yeah.
Work session an hour early.
Mhm.
Is an hour enough?
I would probably say an hour and a half. Given 3 departments are going to be presenting, so
Okay.
5:30.
5:30.
5:30, like tonight.
Yeah. That work for everyone?
Mhm.
Okay, 5:30, October 11th, work session.
Shane and Jess?
We'll make it work.
Yeah, this is just an extremely busy time of the year for me. It's the fall rush when everybody is trying to get their projects finished before it starts to get real nasty outside. So I'll do my best, but I feel like consecutive weeks of meetings make it extremely difficult. I mean, last week I had 2 meetings to attend. Week before that was a meeting. This is a extremely long meeting tonight. Just like us to be conscious of the commitment that we're asking of our representatives.
Speaking of that, if there isn't anything else on the finance committee, there is a planning commission meeting. Jess or Jim? You want to give the update on the planning commission if we're finished with finance?
Are we finished with finance?
I don't think we have anything else.
Okay,
Oh, I would like to add one thing on the finance committee. I apologize for not making it. I had a family emergency. I was in the hospital, so with a family member, not myself. But yeah, that was,
Well, it was very long and tedious because it was line by line,
it was a big,
everything.
yeah,
in the-
sorry, I couldn't make it.
So,
Right?
but we'll do it again in a few weeks, so don't worry.
Well, I'll talk about the planning commission. I'll touch on the topics, the bullet points here, and Jess is much better than I am of filling in all the blanks. Roll calls at 7 PM, 7:01. The first agenda item was Town of Silverton subdivision application for the Reese Villas Townhome subdivision. Go. Jess, you're on. Anything?
I think this is pretty straightforward. This is just a subdivision application for the new fourplex that's being built over on the end of Reese. That was recommended for approval by the planning commission. I would suspect that we will see that coming to the town board here shortly.
We discussed sidewalks and curbing and lighting. The next item was use subject to review application for the proposed gray duplex. That was pretty self-explanatory as well. Anything you want to add?
Just another multi-family residence going in the ED over by the RV parks. I think this is the 3rd application that's come to the planning commission this year alone. And again, we've got the planning department working on a possibility of zoning changes over there. It's really behaving more like a R2 zone and not ED. And so we want to try to head off any potential conflicts that may arise from having all these residential multifamily units in an area where we could have a mechanic shop or a welding shop or something like that.
All right. And the 3rd item, which was our last for the evening, was a work session with the Silverton School Board. Silverton School Board letter regarding 2 community issues, A, pedestrian safety, and B, parking congestion. And we had a very nice, healthy discussion with public input. I thought it was good.
I think a lot of the concerns arise out of the safety for the children. We're seeing more people parking in those areas, which are blocking the visibility of the stop signs at Reese and 12th. And so it was just something that I think we'll see coming to the town board here shortly. And Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts here. A lot of people that are going to be affected by any decision we make. So we've got residents that use that parking area. We have businesses that use that parking area. We have, it's right next to the post office. So lots going on. Lots to think about.
That was perfect. That's why I miss Jess sitting next to me.
Oh, hey. You don't want me to sit
That was
next
it.
to you?
You're so far away.
Oh.
Here, I'll
good.
sit right-
Yeah, okay. We can go like.
Yeah, that was it.
We have had public input on that third item that you mentioned, Jim and Jess, and it sounds like it'll come before us. And I just wanted to acknowledge that we had an email on offering comment on that as well. So along with the public comment tonight. Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Number 9, trustee reports.
Finance committee meeting, me, Jim, Gloria, sorry, Tyler, Kelly, great, we discussed it.
Okay. Shane?
Just super quick, everybody should go vote. There's an election coming up. Ballot should be in your mail soon. It's important that everybody weigh in on all these issues.
Okay. And I do have an email saying that the ballots went to the post office on Friday.
Good.
Okay.
I've already had a couple of people come in and say that they didn't get it, that's not in their box, but we have ballots downstairs and we've got a system of replacing the number of the ballot that they were supposed to get with the ballot that we take out of the drawer and give them as a replacement.
Great. That's really helpful information.
And everybody has to remember that ballots cannot be forwarded from your PO box. You need to go physically get them. Or if you have a permanent mailing address outside of this community, because you're only a part-year resident, you need to be able to come up and pick up a new one.
Anything else for trustee reports?
I got a final comment. Great job tonight. It's early.
On the fly. On the fly. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, number 10, continued business. This is Kendall Mountain Master Plan update. And Gloria and I can kind of tag team this one, I think.
Yeah, so Kendall Mountain Recreation Area Master Plan has $43,750 allocated to it through grant funding that will expire next year, in the spring, actually. So in the spring this year, trustees were asked to vote on the RFP, and this was tabled until the fall. Well, we just had the fall equinox, and I have been asked to bring this up for discussion. Knowing that this topic has raised a lot of concerns, I have put together a short memo outlining our options to move forward in your packet. And basically, I'm asking you to vote on the release of the RFP and give me direction on how to spend the master plan funds, if at all.
Right. So I think just to provide a little bit of background and sort of timeline on this, if I can just add to Gloria's. We left off with the committee and their sort of endpoint product was this RFP that they produced and received community input on, and it was primed to be put before the Board of Trustees, and we set a work session for that to happen. And then we had a lot of disruption and we needed a new administrator and we were lacking attorney and legal advice for a while. And so it was prudent and it made sense. And it was the responsible thing to do to table that issue. And I think just knowing that the planning funds are still there and that the committee is still a committee, but it hasn't been meeting because there hasn't been any direction from the Board of Trustees on what to do. I think that tonight, I think it would be helpful and provide some certainty and direction for the committee and also for the community to discuss what we want to do about the RFP and make a decision about that. So we can create closure and know how to move forward. And I think we should have a little bit of discussion around that, and then I'd like to see us make a decision.
Okay, I'll start in on the discussion. I am okay with the committee continuing. I'm okay with under the conditions that they start looking at the actual 92.91 acres, going off of what the scope is from the RNPP recommendations that were already turned in on behalf of the town of Silverton to the BLM for us to get this conveyance. I think that we could actually, with that little bit of money that we've got for the planning, we could start actually doing something about the skating rink, potentially working on the river trail. I do believe the river trail needs a little bit of work because we need to figure out which lands we are crossing that belong to either the county or private. So I don't know if the scope could match some sort of actual survey for area within to make sure that we are compliant and we are not trespassing or building on other people's property. And I do believe the skating rink could be huge. And I would love to see a small, maybe single lift expansion. This is personally for Kendall. I think that that's what the community has spoken up about so much that that's why we had to put this RFP on hold. I would like to get rid of the RFP, period. I know how much work was put into it, but I think that there was a lot of, I don't know, I wouldn't say misguided, but unguided attention onto something that was not really feasible. Tyler called it our unicorn, and I believe he is 100% correct. And that's my views. Thank you.
Shane.
Wait, you're on mute.
I 1000% agree with Molly. I think it would be a shame to not utilize these funds for further planning, and that we're in a good position to look at a master plan within the scope of what we have today. And I think the committee did a brilliant job. I'm still confused about some of the concerns about the committee to date. I think given the direction they were provided, they did exactly what we asked. And I think sometimes we forget about the context 2 years ago of looking at a deficit budget and really limited bandwidth in every respect, and also asking the committee to figure out a way to expand terrain, which was the result of all of those community engagement sessions. And so I think, the committee took that direction and came up with a proposal. And I think the rest of the community and the trustees have all kind of looked at it and said, we don't believe that that unicorn is likely to exist, like Tyler put it. And that a private partnership is not in the best interest of a Kendall expansion in order for the town to maintain its character. But I think it'd be awesome for the town to continue exploring this, and for the committee, if they wanted to take on the new direction of a more limited scope planning session.
My question would be for the grant funds that we secured for the Kendall Mountain project. Are there any conditions attached to those grant funds on how we use them, what we use them for, and what we research?
Yes.
Move towards, and then what are those? And can we use those within the new set of guidelines that we're sort of looking at?
Yes, so they can be used for planning, like a plan, a master plan. They could be used for planning of a single lift if we wanted. So as long as they're just like planning documents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other restriction on them is just what we see in the memo there, Tyler, about when they have to, when we have to spend them.
Yeah, they expire. I would like to see that money be used towards something that benefits the community. So I'd like to see it used towards planning for something at Kendall, whether it's a smaller plan for the area, or, even just turning it into more of a Mullis Lake type asset where there's different things that you can do, maybe some campsites, obviously fixing the ice skating rink is huge on my list, but I love to skate. So, but yeah, using that money before we lose it, I think is prudent. And I also, I still haven't really changed my mind on the RFP. I don't think it's in the best interest of the town, the way it's currently written.
I'll speak to that. So I have said this before and I'll say it again, but try to be more clear this time, because I think there's been a little bit of misrepresentation about my personal hopes and dreams for Kendall, or perhaps how I've represented the community and their hopes and dreams, but I don't have a personal plan for Kendall at all. I very much feel like it's a tremendous resource for our community, and I think it would be a real detriment to wreck it or do something that's not in the spirit of the community and what the community wants. I think, to speak to what Shane said earlier about the context of how we got to the RFP, that process made sense at the time. And upon further consideration and listening to a lot of feedback from the community and a lot of changes happening in our community in the last year and a half, I was curious to see if the unicorn was out there. Tyler and I had this discussion at a previous meeting, and I just wanted to know if there was a unicorn. And that was a real reason for me wanting to release the RFP. I do not support that idea. I don't think that there's community support for the RFP. I never wanted to pursue a private partner that wasn't a good fit for the community. And I think even more so now that we see our economy shifting and our bandwidth at town shifting, I think it makes a lot of sense to pursue. And actually, it was my preference from the very beginning, from my very first day with the committee, to really look at how we run Kendall like a municipal park. In fact, to just throw in a personal example, I had returned from Iceland and we were skiing in all these little community ski hills in Iceland, and they are very much a community park model. And I was so inspired by that experience and so motivated by what can be done when a community works together in that way, that I really thought that would be a really good model for us here in Silverton. And we talked a lot about different models. And I do want to emphasize that there isn't a plan for Kendall. And that's what makes this conversation so relevant tonight, because I actually think it's a lot of money. I mean, it's not loads of money, but it's significant. We have a lot of money to put towards this project. And I think it's irresponsible of us as trustees to not leverage it somehow for the benefit of the community. And I think looking at Silverton, or looking at Kendall as a park and thinking about how we can be good stewards of that resource. And we have a wayfinding plan and we have a Mullis plan, and, we have money to create a Kendall plan. And if there's a way to sort of accelerate that process away from the RFP, I think it makes a lot of sense. I totally agree with what Molly says. I hear the feedback from the community, and I never personally, or as a representative on the committee, I never wanted to see a huge resort happen in Silverton. I'm very much opposed to that. I have been from day one. I continue to be opposed to it. I think that a huge resort with lots of lifts, or whatever the metric is that we use to describe huge resort, whether it's acreage or vertical feet or number of lifts or number of visitors per day, I think those metrics have been a little bit frightening, because we've had maybe some misinformation about a plan, labeling those numbers and naming those numbers. The issue is we don't have a plan. We have money to put towards a plan. And I think now is a really good time to try to leverage that money. And if we don't make a decision on the RFP, then we're sort of stuck in this gray area. And I think it's only fair to the committee, and I think it's fair to our community to bring some closure to that issue and just sort of check that box and move forward. So that's, I think, all I have to say about that issue. Although if you want to stay here later, I could keep going, but I'll stop there for now.
When I would like to commend you, we discussed this at the retreat. And I said, you need to make your position very well known. And I'm glad you finally spoke up about it. Congratulations.
Thanks, Molly.
I'll throw in my really brief input since I think everyone covered it. It's a shame you have that planning money go to waste, and it's gonna take planning to do whatever we want to do over there as a community. And I, like Tyler, also enjoy a nice ice rink. And I also just want to put a shameless plug out there, since I met with community builders and a lot of our youth in town, it'd be a really awesome place for a skate park. And it's a shameless plug. I'm a skateboarder too, so just throwing it out there.
I really like to ice skate too. And I'm really bad at skateboarding. That's too dangerous for me, but I like that people skateboard. And we've talked about fire rings and overall sort of general improvements over at Kendall. And I think the other reason to sort of address the RFP is because it seems like it's a bit of a block in, and I don't know how this happened, because the committee wanted to continue to address the low hanging fruit, we called it at Kendall. And I think somehow the RFP, the idea of a private partner, that I don't know anyone who wanted to sign up with and get in bed with somebody that we didn't like. I think that took away from and continues to block what we can do over there. And so if we can settle the idea of the RFP, I think we can open up some really exciting possibilities that we would like to see over there. And I understand how we get into this. I want to acknowledge the idea of planning from, just to go back and reiterate that the Kendall Committee also supports ice skating. The Kendall Committee could support ice climbing if we wanted to have something like that over there. I mean, I think the possibilities are huge. We just never engaged in a planning process. And the reason is because if we were going to bring a private partner on board, which makes everybody uncomfortable, including me, then it would make sense to have that private partner participate in the planning process. And it was sort of a cart and horse struggle of where to put that. And I think if we make this decision tonight to not go forward with pursuing a private partner, then we open the door to a new path to go down. And I think that's responsible of us, because doing nothing over there actually isn't doing nothing. That's very irresponsible. And there's a lot that needs to happen. And back to the ice rink, it was hard to sort of look at that and take it as its own thing. We could pour $200,000 of grant money or investments into the ice rink and find out later that is in a terrible location, and we could have made parking and the experience at Kendall much improved by moving the ice rink someplace else. And so I think we just want to be really intentional and really careful about our planning process. And I certainly don't want to rush or make anyone nervous about a partnership that, isn't the right fit for the community. And I think we can do this. I think we've got it. I think we've got a really strong community and we have a lot of input, and I'm really optimistic about the ability to make improvements to Kendall, including the trails that need work or fire rings or all kind. Parking is an issue, whether it's just all an issue, and we need to address it.
Well, and you're addressing something directly with the skating rink. It's been having issues for years. It was actually further back, because that's where the old building used to be. So I don't remember exactly what it is. It's some sort of shifting something that happens over there. So it's like moving it on the other side is where, that's what we should be doing. Making that into, more parking, however it has to happen. I would like to see I would like to see this reopened, though, to see if you have new members of the community that would like to apply to get on that board. And I don't mind expanding it either, but the biggest problem that I heard from the community every time was, can you just YouTube it? Because we'd like to see where this is at. And we know with Zoom, you just click a button. Well, and here you click it about 500 times tonight. But so that way the community does feel that it's an open process and they can come to the committee with input. Because it is, I mean, the true leadership of the town is to include the town. So
And all of the meetings were open and they were not recorded, but they were available on Zoom.
Yeah, but that's what they were asking. I mean, that's 90% of the questions I fielded was, can you just record it? So that way, and post it on the Silverton YouTube channel, just because people would feel that included in the decisions. And they'd be able to, you know, take notes, send y'all emails, whatever it needs to happen. We can redefine the scope of this right now, or we can do it via, you know, an amendment to the resolution that already exists. Yeah.
I think Shane had a comment.
Shane, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask that, you know, as we're talking about things like recording committee meetings and YouTube stuff, just that we apply these decisions consistently. You know, my understanding is the reason that Kendall didn't do that is because none of the other committees do that either. So I'm totally in support of all committee meetings being recorded and streamed on YouTube, but I just think we need to make this as a universal decision, not treating this one different than other things. You know, it's not any less important than the finance committee meeting or the Parks and Rec meeting. Like I just think we should be consistent.
See, and I have a disagreement with that because the other ones are innocuous. They're what we do every day and we have to bring it to this board no matter what. So, and that's where a lot of the breakdown happened, was too many people couldn't go at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they felt it was somehow being subversive to the community. And that's what I'm saying. If we just go through and change that little bit of scope in a resolution to amend what we already have, then we're not singling out any committee. We're just making it more transparent for all. That's the way I feel, because I think transparency.
And I'm not disagreeing with the idea of recording it and distributing it on YouTube. I just think we should do that for everything.
I think too, it's, you know, where we go from here. I think what's important tonight is that we make a decision on the RFP. I actually think it's really important that we thank the committee, and it feels very awkward coming from me as someone who served on the committee, but I think it's really important that we acknowledge the work. It doesn't mean that because a committee puts in a lot of time and effort or creates something that they, you know, that it's good work, or that we, you know, that's not the bar, I think, to acknowledge contributions, but it was a lot of time. And I think it's important. I'm grateful for the work of the committee, and I'm grateful that it was an important experience for me and a huge learning experience. And I think also for us as a community, it brought out a lot of good information for us. And going forward, it may be the right decision for the committee to just meet to talk about the relationship of that committee to this board. And if we can use this planning money to increase our capacity for planning there, I just think it's a question about how the committee continues to function and how it continues to function in relationship to the money that we're putting towards the planning. So I don't know. I just think tonight it's important to me to kind of keep our eye on the decision on the RFP and and to find out if there's support to use the money to actually continue the planning process. And I want to thank the committee. And Sue's here, and I don't know how our structure might allow for Sue to participate in this discussion, or if we just wait a few minutes and then you can add it as public comment at the end. How do we want to proceed with that?
We said public comment was okay if it pertained to the subject. That was what we all decided on.
Jump in, the water's warm. Come on in.
Thank you. Sue Morris, 1846 Green Street. I appreciate you following up with this. We are now into fall and it does need to be addressed in terms of what to do about the RFP. I feel like from a committee standpoint, what is missing here is that the committee only briefly presented a very small summary report, and it was mainly the planning guidelines of, what we had filtered through that you needed to know going forward to be what needed to be under your belt to proceed as a ski town or ski community. But what it would be helpful or would have been helpful for us and still is if we had an hour and a half with you as a workshop, coming to the table together for you to hear the recommendations, the research, the vast majority of information that flowed from community members, from ski towns, from small ski operators throughout the West that allowed us to put together these recommendations and to come to the conclusion that we couldn't do this on our own. We couldn't build even a little bit of this on our own, that we really felt like we needed a partner. There's so much behind all of this. And I feel like we all got waylaid with the hair pulling and the, just the angst that goes with the perception of a small ski or a ski area is that of what went on in the 1980s. There are no more 1980s ski resorts being built. They're all small frame and they're pretty unique and pretty different. And were we to do anything here, whether it's just, in increments to tree line and not above, and with one single chairlift, fits the bill with what's unique out there in small ski areas where we are unique. A workshop would be really helpful so that you don't misconstrue or misperceive, how the committee got to this point with the RFP. I don't think anyone on the committee ever intended to go forward with a public-private partnership. It was mainly to gain information from what might one of those prospective partners be able to bring. It was mainly information a gathering process. So I think we would appreciate just a little bit of your time just to sort of understand the not back room, but just the working framework from where we came from. It was never 5 chairlifts. It was 5 350 lineal feet fixed grip lifts, which were inexpensive. We could easily go do what they're doing at Silverton Mountain with 1 chairlift, 1,000 foot up that hill. So you can see how it all, in a time of COVID, without the opportunity to have, large information gathering sessions and exchanges. Yeah. We would like a coming together on it and the opportunity just to sit and visit and hear your thoughts. That's where I think we left it. So thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
Any further discussion?
So would we like to hear what the committee, the Kendall Committee has gathered and use that information moving forward with other decisions? It sounds like there's a lot of valuable information that they've collected. They did do a lot of work. But does that exclude the RFP? And can we still use all the information gathered?
Yeah.
As sort of a compass on how to move forward? Or,
I think it would be wise to fold in the members of the committee that have done a lot of research and have the documents to refresh our memories of what we learned as we go forward with whatever happens over there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sue. I think the committee is really a wealth of knowledge, and it never was a decision-making body. It was an information gathering body. And so, so they have a lot, they know a lot, and they have a lot of it documented.
So I understand where you're coming from, Tyler, and I appreciate what Sue has just said. So if we vote no, and we do not release the RFP, that doesn't mean anything. That means that the RFP that was created just doesn't go out to be published. So then it says here to give staff directions. If the vote no for release of the RFP, give directions on how these funds are restricted to the master plan, possibly creating a master plan with the current Kindle assets. So work session would then be very easy to create, bringing the whole entire thing together.
bringing them in.
Yeah, exactly. And then got all of it in front of us, and then we can go through and make decisions on how the master planning for Kindle can move forward from that point.
Without
So-
the consideration of a private partner.
Without just, scrapping the entire RFP. The information all still exists.
Yeah, yeah.
You just don't have to release it.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, because I'm anticipating potential confusion here. So scrapping the RFP refers to the RFP requesting a proposal for a private partnership. Potentially, we may need to issue an RFP for an organization like Community Builders, or if we were to expand our planning capacity beyond the staff here, we would potentially have to release an RFP for a planning partner. And that would be very different and not at all an RFP seeking a private partner. But I just wouldn't want the community to get confused or upset if a different RFP came out regarding Kendall. It would be not for a private partner.
Okay, but that's why I keep saying that having that broadcast just available for people to go back and watch, it doesn't matter if it's 2 a.m., that discussion. So that way we don't have that misconception anymore. The open transparency will exist. And then you don't have this massive rush to, oh my God, what's going on now?
So to clarify that, if an RFP came out, it would be a request for proposals, like
For something different.
for something different, not for a private partner.
And we do have three constituents on the line that would like to speak to this topic as well.
So, yeah, we did allow Sue's comment, but we aren't technically in our public comment period yet. So do we want to?
But if it refers to the topic, I thought.
Yep, if it refers
Right
to
now.
the topic.
Okay, I'm just making sure that we're,
No, and I agree with you because this is a committee. So we're hearing from a committee, right?
yeah, I just wanted to distinguish what was happening. So, great, it looks like Jared's here. Jared, would you like to comment on the Kendall Mountain master planning process?
Yes, I would. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay. I am a bit confused. I just want to start with saying thank you to the Kendall Mountain Expansion Committee that was assembled earlier this year and last year as well, for that matter, for their dedication and putting all that forth. I also understand that Molly was saying about YouTube posting meetings for review, for post, Zoom, if people weren't informed or didn't know about it. Thank you for all of that. The questions I have, or not questions, I won't do that, but trying to hear more about motions moving forward on how to deal with this, because I personally don't feel like it's just for you to vote on anything tonight about an RFP, and it sounds like you just shifted that to something different. And that's what I'm confused about, to understand, how could you put this forth for a vote right now? But now you're saying that you're trying to look at different things moving forward. And what does that look like to me? I would assume that that's more information gathering, no private party interests. I'm not opposed to private party interests. My objection earlier this year was about having knowledge about what those private parties are, where they're from, what their requirements are for things like infrastructure and making a whole plan work. I'm okay with expansion of the area. I think it'd be a boon for Silverton. But for me, what you guys just discussed in the last 10 minutes is pretty confusing. And I'm pretty much opposed to you guys making any kind of vote to send out an RFP that's different from the one we were working on for the last 2 years without any input or comment. And I'm sure you're going to put that forth, but I don't feel like there's any way that you can vote on anything with the RFP tonight, in my opinion. So those are my comments. Thank you.
So this
Thanks,
was-
Jared. This
was
is a great
Sally's point.
example.
Yeah, this was exactly Sally's point.
Shane.
Yeah, I think it's worth clarifying to that comment that there wasn't a discussion to vote affirmatively on any type of new RFP tonight. The only thing in front of us tonight is whether or not to vote against releasing the current RFP that's been presented, and then possibly direction to staff about, what we want to see in process moving forward. But we're not going to be considering or voting on a different scope of RFP tonight. It's just whether or not the board tonight is voting for or against the release of the current draft RFP that has been sitting in front of us for a few months. And I hope that clarifies.
The current draft of an RFP stands for request for proposals. We issue RFPs for contractors to renovate the bathrooms at Columbine Park. And this was an RFP for a private partner to work with the town on improvements at Kendall Mountain. And tonight we have the RFP before us, the one that everyone has seen regarding a private partner at Kendall. And that would be the only thing that we would discuss or vote on tonight. But I anticipated confusion about that language RFP because there is a potential to issue additional RFPs on any number of subjects, from renovating Blair Street and fixing Columbine bathrooms and building something at Moelis. Those are all RFP processes. Maybe I just made things more confusing, but I want to go on record addressing the potential confusion that may arise as we pursue a planning option at Kendall. Are there any other comments that are on Zoom? Would anyone be opposed if we hear from them right now? Let's do it.
Fire away.
Kendall Mountain.
Relating to Kendall Mountain. It looks like Melody. Melody, you're muted.
I think we stopped again too. No, there we go.
Okay, I think I got it.
There you are.
Time is of the essence, because if you look at when that money has to be spent by,
yes,
you have a very short period to get it done. And I actually respectfully ask for you not to get lost in the weeds of what was done in the past and just jump on what people in town want now. So your biggest question is to how to include everybody in town and have an open meeting where people can make suggestions. For instance, I grew up ice skating on the edge of the Rio Grande River. I would love to see a great skating rink and everything that goes with ice skating in a safe place. And so I think ice skating could make us a bigger mecca in a lot of ways because more families would come to enjoy that. So how do you get to the public thing? Do X amount of town board members need to go to the meetings so that they have to be public? I don't know, but it has to be very open, and you're just going to have to break and start forward to try to get a plan and get this money spent. Otherwise, you're going to go on for months. And that was part of where the committee got stuck, is it just went on and on and on. And they did put in a lot of hours and a lot of time in what they sincerely believed was the right thing. And I do appreciate that. But the community felt excluded. Make sure you keep us included in all decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melody.
Am I on?
You're on, but not anymore.
There you go.
Are there other comments from Zoom? Shane, do you have a comment?
I was just going to ask if anyone's prepared to make a motion on this issue. It's getting pretty late.
I'm prepared. I don't want to stifle any discussion, but I am prepared. I'll do it, just so that it's very clear for everyone in the community. I would like to make a motion to not release the request for proposal from the Kendall Committee and to consider the RFP to be null and void.
I'll second that motion.
Kelly, roll call, please.
Trustee Barilla,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wiggert,
Yes.
trustee Beerma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Okay, so do we need to create now a work session in order for the Kendall Mountain Committee to show up? And then to maybe possibly have a slightly different resolution in order to create the scope or a redefined scope? Let's put it that way. Yeah.
I very much support what Molly is saying, and I just want to briefly acknowledge that this has been a very hot topic for our community and highly controversial, and we just had a unanimous vote on it. And I think that speaks volumes to our ability to engage with the community, to hear the community, and to adapt and pivot in really intense situations. So thank you, Molly, for moving us forward, but just to take a minute to acknowledge that.
Yep. And let's
Jane, you got a comment?
acknowledge the committee for all of the hard work
Yep.
that they've already done.
Thanks to the committee.
Yes.
Just totally agree. And to suggest that we give staff the direction in number 2 in our memo, that if the vote is no for the release of the RFP, to give direction on how to use the funds that are restricted to a master plan, possibly creating a master plan with Kendall's current assets, and to also tie that into Molly's suggestion that that direction be connected to a work session with the current committee and a brainstorm on how we can possibly expand the committee or pursue a process that will feel more inclusive to everyone.
I very much support that.
I can take that direction. Did we want to set a date tonight, or did we want to ask the committee their days and go back and forth? I'm happy to do either.
I think we'll probably need input from the committee.
Okay.
Need input from the committee.
I don't want to continue to kick the can though. So to just be really diligent about setting that, because again, the funding is time sensitive. So I'm happy to not set it this very instant, but I would like to be attentive to the ticking clock.
I will send out a doodle poll for all trustees and committee and try and find the best date that works for us all. Beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Sue. And to Kevin Farmer and to Jeff Davis and Anthony, and thanks to Austin, who came in and out in different capacities, and Pete McKay. And Lisa Branner. I hope I didn't forget anyone. Moving on to 11.
Was Weller on there?
Jim Weller, me,
Jim Muller.
a couple other people.
Thank you. Planning Commission. Great. Apologies. I'll correct my mistake at our next.
Grady
meeting.
Ham, the BLM field rep who was here at the beginning.
Or Shane can correct me right now. Okay. Number 11, public comment. All right.
Is anybody in the?
Anybody online?
Well, I'd have to say, it's good to see your face 2 times tonight.
Okay, seeing none, it's 9:57 and, oh,
There's Zoom comments.
Yep.
Your hand is still raised.
Hear me now?
there you are.
Thank you, everybody. Love ya. Go home and go to sleep.
Thank you.
Great public comment.
It's the worst heart ever. Heart.
I mean, no judgment on comment. Actually, I retract that. Okay, thank you, Melody. It's now 9:58 and this adjourns the regular meeting, September 27th. Thanks.